My father, the Grand Tutor Shui, held such high rank and power that he was even exempt from kneeling before the emperor. As the youngest daughter and legitimate child in the family, I was my father's most beloved. The Marquis of Pingnan shared a deep friendship with my father. When the Marquis finally had a son in his later years, after brief discussions with my father, they arranged a betrothal between us while we were still in our infancy. This engagement remained stable and undisturbed for many years, until the servants from my household brought the bad news that Xianhe Tower had been vandalized. The servant trembled like a sieve as he lay prostrate on the ground. Miss Dongqing said that if the young mistress doesn't come, she'll smash the signboard and ruin our business. Xianhe Tower was the property of my Shui family, and Dongqing was the beloved of my husband, whom I had never met. At that moment, only my mother, Lady Shui, and I were present. The rest were all servants. My dear, mother took my hand and spoke. You're about to be married. Let me share some intimate words with you. Do you know what else is most important for a woman, beyond music, chess, calligraphy, painting, needlework, and feminine virtues? Gazing at mother's gentle smile, I fully understood the deeper meaning behind this question. It was something I had been learning since childhood. I said, it's about the grand scheme of things. And power, mother. Lady Shui smiled even more deeply. Yes, my dear, only by understanding the grand scheme can you grasp power, and only by grasping power can you walk steadily through life. I thought of Dongqing's troublemaking and realized this was her attempt to put me in my place. The betrothal gifts from the Pingnan Marquis's household arrived yesterday, and today Dongqing came to make a scene. My mother seemed satisfied with my answer and waved her hand dismissively. Handle today's matter yourself. As I rose and headed to Xianhe Tower with my servants, my thoughts were occupied solely with power and the bigger picture. Wealth and authority are the only things of true substance. As for the cheap affection of the heir apparent, let this Dongqing have it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. When my carriage stopped before Xianhe Tower, Dongqing was throwing a tantrum in the main hall, smashing bowls and plates across the floor, flashing me a triumphant sneer. So you're the Shui family's young mistress. Your looks are rather plain. You bear some resemblance to one of our household entertainers. Dongqing was indeed beautiful. Even when baring her claws in fury, she remained strikingly alluring. Everyone knew this mere singing girl had risen to prominence solely through the patronage of the Pingnan Marquis's heir. One of my more hot-tempered maids stepped forward and slapped her across the face without hesitation. It's not your place to speak ill of the young lady. Dongqing, clutching her flushed face in anger, turned and swept all the objects off the table, screaming, your Xianhe Tower poached our customers and stole our business, even disfiguring several of our girls. How dare you still act righteous? Xianhe Tower had always been peaceful and rarely engaged in such unscrupulous acts. I don't know if Dongqing deliberately started the dispute first, but I do know that who appears justified in such petty squabbles today is unimportant. Stop, apologize to Miss Dongqing, I said, startling the maid who had spoken up for me. I stared at her, ignoring Dongqing's increasingly smug expression, and said, apologize to Miss Dongqing. Do you dare disobey my orders? Naturally, the maid didn't dare protest. She bowed reluctantly and muttered an apology. Lord Jiang loves only me. Dongqing ignored the maidservant, staring straight at me as she spoke. I smiled. It can't be easy for Lord Jiang either, unable to marry the one he loves. The incident at Xianhe Tower where people were forcibly taken was indeed improper. Someone from the household will naturally send an apology gift to Miss Dongqing shortly. Wang Youtsai, fetch 300 taels of silver and deliver it to her. Consider it compensation for the medical expenses and damages for the girls' faces. Xianhe Tower will be closed for half a month as a gesture of apology. How does that sound? Dongqing's triumphant expression grew even more pronounced as she reluctantly nodded. I suppose that'll do. However, I want to slap this maidservant. Before I could say another word, her palm had already landed on the face of the maidservant, chunnying. All right, you know what's good for you. Holly left these words behind and walked away with an alluring sway. Spring Oriole came to my side, touching her swollen red cheek, nearly on the verge of tears from grievance. Miss, she was the one who smashed our things and insulted you, yet we had to apologize and send her gifts. Holly's slap was delivered with deadly force, even drawing a trickle of blood from the corner of her mouth. I committed each of these incidents to memory, patting Chunying's head as I said, "Don't be afraid, her triumph won't last long." After comforting Chunying, I brought her back to the mansion and reported today's actions to Mother. Upon hearing my account, Mother stroked her teacup with a satisfied smile. "Well done, just like this. Ching, you're learning well." I leaned against my mother coquettishly, shaking her hand as I pleaded, "Mother, I want to eat the ribs you make with your own hands tonight. Let Chunying have some too, her face is badly injured." All right, Mother tapped my nose and laughed. "You're always the best at getting favors for them. Send someone to fetch a physician, make it a noticeable affair." That evening, the physician arrived in a flurry of haste. Following behind the physician were the Marchioness of Pingnan and Dongqing, along with servants carrying several large chests, all marching grandly into the Grand Tutor's residence. "My son is still at the front, so I apologize on his behalf to you, my dear, and to this young maid, Dongqing. Kneel down and kowtow to the Grand Tutor's wife and daughter." Mother feigned surprise, repeatedly saying it was unnecessary, while I sat in the back row, subtly revealing a smile. It's true this marriage was arranged since childhood, but the mutual benefits between the Marquis of Pingnan and my father, Grand Tutor Shui, had long been settled. If the marriage falls through, it's the Marquis of Pingnan's family who will be scrambling in chaos, losing both money and effort. And it's also their family who will struggle to hold their heads high in the future. As for me, a noblewoman who broke off her engagement due to the romantic escapades of the Pingnan Marquis's heir, nothing will happen to me. Dongqing knelt in the room, crying and kowtowing in apology, her gaze toward me filled with venomous hatred. But what's the use? I truly wanted to tell her. "Dongqing, the heir's love is insignificant in this marriage. You're fighting for the wrong thing." Dongqing's outburst only succeeded in giving the Pingnan Marquis's family a good scare. The Marchioness of Pingnan came to see me several times, and even Chunying received unexpected extra care. My future mother-in-law solemnly promised me that Qing would never be allowed to surpass me. "See, I told you her pride wouldn't last long." As soon as she left, I smiled and said to Chunying. The swelling on the young girl's face had mostly subsided, and she'd even put on some weight. "Miss, you truly have foresight. But why is that?" I ate a longan she had peeled for me and smiled, saying, "Because she failed to consider the bigger picture." Chunying looked utterly confused, so I continued to explain. "With the Marquis of Pingnan himself bedridden for years, naturally he only wishes for me to marry over peacefully so his son will have someone to care for him." Dongqing's tantrum. The gold and silver gifts my family sent as compensation, and the physicians I arranged, all these are proof that she has overstepped her bounds by bullying me. My father dotes on me most. If he were to break off the engagement for fear of me suffering any grievance, it would be troublesome indeed. Tell me, how could the Marquis's household not be anxious? Chunying seemed to half understand and was about to nod when my mother entered the room. "Mother," I said with a smile, rising to my feet. "Come sit quickly." My future mother-in-law sent the freshest longans, they're incredibly sweet. Mother took her seat at the head of the table but didn't touch the longans. Instead, she smiled and shared some good news. "My dear, urgent news today. The heir of Pingnan Marquis has returned victorious to court, and the wedding date is set. They fought splendidly in this battle, and I fear they'll receive more rewards. Will my future days be more comfortable then?" I set down the fruit in my hand. Mother's smile deepened. "Naturally, but there's one more thing you must see clearly." With that, she dismissed everyone around us. "The son of the Marquis of Pingnan has achieved remarkable military feats, back when his status wasn't so high. Our Grand Tutor's family forming a marriage alliance with him wasn't considered a big deal, but now that his status has risen again and again, your identity as the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor has become somewhat conspicuous." I grew serious. "I understand, but don't be afraid. Your sister in the palace has recently been promoted again, and our Shui family's position remains secure. If you bear a child, they too will benefit. As for the son of the Marquis of Pingnan, his achievements will also become a support for the child in your womb." "Mother means to say that the heir—" I began to comprehend. Mother's smile reappeared as she nodded, saying, "Qing is indeed clever. The Marquis of Pingnan has been ill for years. growing thinner by the day. I fear his time is short. If one day you could again keep the child and lose the father, the entire Pingnan Marquisate would fall under your control, and your child would become a Marquis of Pingnan without military achievements, yet with a loyal and heroic father. As she spoke, she touched my flat belly, as if a tiny life already existed there. I thought of the days to come as the matriarch of Pingnan Marquisate and felt quite delighted. Then I could even keep a pet cat. No one in the manor would dare to control me, and the heir of Pingnan Marquisate could dote on whomever he pleased. I won't let you down, father, I said with a smile. The crown prince returned, and the grand wedding proceeded as scheduled. Despite his illness, the Marquis of Pingnan attended. Though Jiang Ningyu, the crown prince, had just returned victorious from battle, he bore little of the fierce aura one might expect. Instead, he appeared dignified and handsome, truly a man of noble bearing. No wonder Dongqing cared for him so much. Just as the wedding ceremony reached the bridal chamber entrance, a woman burst into the scene wailing and sobbing. Miss Dongqing suddenly vomited blood and fainted, murmuring only the young master's name. She knelt on the ground howling with pleas. Through my embroidered veil, I saw Lord Pingnan's face darken instantly. But my newlywed husband seemed to lose all composure. He tore off the ceremonial red flower from his robe, exclaiming, "Take me to her at once." Before rushing away, I shrugged, removed my bridal veil to greet the guests, and said a heap of kind words on behalf of my clueless husband, giving everyone a dignified way to save face. I voiced no dissatisfaction about this matter, nor did I care when he immediately brought Dongqing back to the manor as his concubine. As the year's end approached, the household affairs multiplied. After assisting my mother-in-law for about a month until I'd grown familiar with everything, I was about to take over full management. It was precisely at this moment that Jiang Ningyu spoke up, mentioning Dongqing to me for the very first time. "There's so much to handle in the household. Let Dongqing help manage things too, it'll ease your burden," he said. Mother-in-law Lady Jiang's willow leaf eyebrows shot up, her voice rising several pitches. "Outrageous. A lowborn concubine, and you want to secure real power for her." I chuckled inwardly. No doubt Dongqing had been whispering in his ear, "Managing a household is no simple task." This vast Pingnan Marquis estate, I only became familiar with its workings within a month because I'd been assisting my mother with household affairs since childhood. This reckless yet incompetent little girl Dongqing, since she insists on snatching things, I'll make her understand what it means to bite off more than one can chew. Mother, why not let Miss Dongqing give it a try? If she does well, wouldn't that lighten my load? I said with a smile. The Marchioness of Pingnan, my mother-in-law, may be the nominal mistress of the Pingnan Marquis household, but as my mother said, my status as the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor always secures me some standing. Lady Jiang agreed, smiling as she praised me before turning to glare at her son. "See what an excellent wife you have. Stop daydreaming about those vixens all day." Jiang Ningyu turned his head away, refusing to look at me. I couldn't be bothered to care and simply smiled as I poured tea for my mother-in-law. "It's fine. He gets along well with Miss Dongqing. There's no harm in them meeting more often." Jiang Ningyu seemed shocked by my magnanimity, but for the first time, he followed me for a short distance after the conversation ended. I stopped in the back garden of the Marquis's estate, pretending to admire an especially ugly rose in bloom. "This flower is blooming beautifully," Jiang Ningyu said, striking up a conversation. "Yeah, right. I'm grateful Qingqing could speak up for Arching today." My perfunctory attitude forced him to get straight to the point. But this wasn't something I wanted to waste time listening to. Only when my husband is happy can I, as his wife, be happy too. He hesitated for a long while before saying, "Actually, I don't truly love Qing deeply either, but she's saved my life several times, so husband, there's no need to worry. I can distinguish between gratitude and affection." I'd talked enough and grown tired of looking, so after offering a few perfunctory words of comfort, I turned and went back to my own courtyard. "Jiang Ningyu, power and love, this wife of yours can tell them apart quite clearly." Not long after Dongqing handed over the authority, winter was approaching. The 12th and 1st lunar months were both favorable times, yet also busy ones, as the year drew to a close. After the Laba Festival and Minor New Year came the Lantern Festival and Qingming. The noble families of the capital had many joyous occasions. And the affairs of the Marquis's household gradually became busier. Seizing this critical moment, I summoned Chunying, preparing to go to Golden Light Temple for a 10-day or half-month vegetarian retreat, preferably lasting until New Year's Eve, to pray for blessings. Coincidentally, during the very days when I was ostentatiously packing my belongings and declaring my intention to pray for my family and husband. Jiang Ningyu's military merits in resisting the Northern Court were finally rewarded. He was unexpectedly appointed as General who guards the North. The position of General who guards the North commands 3 border cities, and he wouldn't need to assume frontline duties until the following spring. Though vested with real authority, his troops were stationed hundreds of miles away from the capital. Even more intriguingly, all 30,000 elite soldiers under his command belonged to the Northern Army, and who was the Grand Marshal of the Northern Army. What a coincidence! How could it be my father, Grand Tutor Shui? While offering congratulations and saying like father, like son, the Pingnan Marquis's family has another military achievement in the northern frontier. I watched as my mother-in-law grew increasingly cautious and Jiang Ningyu's expression became more visibly resentful yet unspoken. It was truly amusing. Military honors required an audience with the emperor. As soon as the imperial decree arrived, Jiang Ningyu and his soldiers were whisked away by the Ministry of Rites for a round of rigorous formalities, and they wouldn't return for 10 days to half a month. My mother-in-law personally went out to purchase the items I needed for my prayer journey, but she was caught in an autumn rain and fell ill, confined to bed for 10 days to half a month. So on the day Chunying and I boarded the carriage to leave, the Marquis's residence officially became Dongqing's domain. I lifted the carriage curtain and looked back, seeing Dongqing, who had come to see me off, kicking a maid of the Marquis's residence beside her. Chunying sat beside me. She didn't witness this domineering scene, but she was still puzzled. Miss, once we leave, the entire marquisate will be hers. I smiled and lowered the carriage curtain. That's exactly what I want to give her, miss. No, young madam, I don't understand. You don't understand again. It's actually quite simple. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. She never intended to shoulder such heavy duties. She only opposed me to compete for favor. How could she possibly manage the vast marquisate properly? Chunying seemed to understand, yet not quite. The old madam will come to realize that only our young lady and our young mistress are fit to hold power. But young mistress, weren't you already the sole authority? Chunying, with greater responsibility comes greater accountability. Dongqing had never pondered what power truly meant, nor did she comprehend the concept of the bigger picture. All she desired was the love of the heir. She believed that if the heir loved her, she could face any predicament. Since I left the Marquis's household, the power in her hands suddenly grew to a scale she had never imagined. Like a child wielding a sharp treasure sword for the first time, her first thought was to chop down the wooden block that always tripped her up. I knew exactly who that wooden block was. It had to be Zhao San, the household's accountant. I had dealings with Zhao San as soon as I entered the Marquis's household. He was quite skilled at greasing palms and tidying up accounts, balancing the books flawlessly while ensuring the servants had their share of spoils. Water too clear breeds no fish. Zhao San's talent must have lined his own pockets handsomely, but he knew his limits, so I never bothered him, turning a blind eye. If his greed ever grew too bold, I could always deal with him later. When Dongqing first entered the mansion as a concubine, she immediately clashed with Zhao San. Initially, she demanded to live in the West Ripple courtyard. But that was the largest rear courtyard of the Marquis's residence. There was no way it would be her turn to occupy it. Zhao San, not wanting to lose his job, refused this arrogant concubine. After this grudge was formed, Dongqing ordered the old maids she brought from her shop to harass Zhao San daily, one day claiming her frail constitution required tonics, the next day insisting broken furniture in the courtyard needed repairs. The conflicts and disputes grew increasingly severe. In the end, she had someone beat Zhao San up. At that time, both she and I had only been in the household for half a month. Zhao San, who had gone out to make purchases, was beaten so badly he had to stay in bed for a day, which ended up keeping me busy all night for no reason. She had no idea about details like covering her tracks. She just treated it like a street brawl between thugs, earning her a fierce scolding from my mother-in-law. It had been a long time since my mother-in-law had flown into such a rage. She nearly pointed her finger right at Jiang Ningyu's nose, demanding he kick this idiot out of the household, a mere concubine, yet she throws her weight around the moment she steps through our doors, daring to beat our household servants like this. Does she have any respect for me as the mistress of this house? Lady Jiang smashed her favorite teacup, her rage so intense she couldn't even eat. Mother Dongqing comes from humble origins. She's never been exposed to such rules before, it's natural she doesn't understand them. Jiang Ningyu still tried to explain. Lady Jiang watched the maids clean up the broken cup, her fury simmering uncontrollably. If she doesn't understand, then she should learn. What's the meaning of this tantrum? Ching, help me up quickly, I'll be dead from anger soon thanks to this unfilial son of mine. I stepped forward to support Lady Jiang. But Jiang Ningyu seemed determined to drive his mother to her grave. She's saved my life several times, so what if a servant was beaten? Our Marquis's household can just pay for it. Lady Jiang clutched her chest, nearly fainting. You unfilial son, you're defending her right in front of your wife. I don't know where she found the strength, but she raised her hand to slap Jiang Ningyu. Even I couldn't hold her back. But Jiang Ningyu was still the only son of the Marquis of Pingnan. How could Lady Jiang, as his mother, bear to strike him? The hand was raised and hung in the air for a long while, but ultimately didn't strike down. You unfilial child. I'm going to die of anger because of you. Of course, I tried to soothe her with gentle words. Mother, let it go. I'm not even angry. Why should you torment yourself to the point of harming your health? The peace of the Marquis household is what matters most. In time, my husband and I will naturally grow familiar with each other. After all, I am the principal wife. It's harmless for him to speak a few words in defense of the woman he loves. Lady Jiang spent a long while calming her breathing, then shot Jiang Ningyu a fierce glare before I led her out to enjoy the scenery and clear her mind, though I managed to stop the mistress from pursuing the matter. After that thorough beating, Zhao San completely lost face with Dongqing. He kept the accounts strictly by the book, refusing any leniency. Having been forced to restrain her extravagant spending for so long, it was inevitable that Dongqing would settle scores with Zhao San. No sooner had we influential masters left than Dongqing dismissed Zhao San from his post, replacing him with a servant from her own shop. Beyond this incident, Dongqing had many personal grudges yet to settle. She jumped around the Hu mansion, venting all her frustrations from the past month. The annoying cook was replaced, the detestable guards were driven out, the maids she disliked were sold off, and even the flowers in the back garden that she didn't care for were uprooted and replanted. Her mother-in-law, having just recovered from a serious illness, should have noticed her reckless behavior immediately. But unexpectedly, misfortune struck. The long-ailing Marquis of Pingnan suddenly passed away, casting a pall of grief over the entire household. The funeral arrangements for the Marquis of Pingnan were handled with the assistance of the Ministry of Rites, ensuring a grand and dignified burial. Jiang Ningyu was overwhelmed with funeral arrangements and traveling to the capital to inherit the title of Marquis Pingnan, buried under endless rituals and formalities, barely finding time to rest each day, though she had long anticipated this day. The Marchioness of Pingnan was still crushed by grief and fell ill once more. With no one left to discipline Dongqing, the girl ran wild as if she were back in her own home. By the time most of the 12th lunar month had passed, she had forgotten the wedding of the youngest son of Marquis Huayuan, forgotten the full-month celebration of Prince Qi's daughter, forgotten the New Year's shopping and preparations, forgotten the winter charcoal, clothes, and tribute goods yet to be purchased for the household. All she remembered was vengeance and settling scores. Every day, people were thrown into remote corners and beaten, their screams echoing. Later, her gang simply started kicking people down and slapping them. Growing bolder by the day, the group she brought in might manage a small shop well enough, but noble houses place the utmost importance on etiquette and social interactions, not to mention the hundreds of maids and servants waiting to be assigned food, clothing, and lodging. Even I had to rely on experienced servants to handle the details of such trivial matters. As one might expect, the Marquis's household was in complete chaos. In truth, the rules have remained unchanged all these years. The household should have run smoothly even when the master was preoccupied, but Holly had replaced too many staff, all of them inexperienced strangers. She had cut off her own possible escape routes once again. I was still offering prayers at Golden Light Temple, though I returned briefly for the funeral of the Marquis of Pingnan, finding some satisfaction in the chaos. For this trip to Golden Light Temple, I had already made arrangements with the important figures and prepared everything needed for my return. To put it bluntly, I deliberately let her wreck the house. If she didn't tear it apart to her heart's content, wouldn't my intentions be wasted? I knelt before the Buddha and counted the days. The little new year was just 2 days away. Any later, and even I wouldn't be able to clean up this mess. I bowed my head to the Buddha and said, "Forgive this humble woman for harboring impure thoughts and using worship as a cover. I shall return to the temple to offer incense another day. Do not blame me, Buddha." After rising, I called for Chunning to arrange our return to the estate. The stray dogs tearing the house apart have already made their grand entrance. How could the virtuous mistress who cleans up the mess be absent? It was high time she understood, while Dongqing wreaked havoc in the manor. The Ministry of Right's reprimand fell squarely on Jiang Ningyu's shoulders. Now that you are the Marquis of Pingnan, you mustn't let your manners slip even slightly, otherwise, it'll be awkward when we meet again in court. The Vice Minister of Rights approached Jiang Ningyu with a thick record of all the social obligations the Marquis's household had neglected over the past fortnight, his tone grave and earnest. "Marquis, look here, this is the gift list for the wedding of the young master from the Huiyuan Marquis's family. Only Prince N, and you, sent nothing. And this one, the 70th birthday celebration of Princess Hengzhou, only, well, among the nobility of Count rank and above, only your household sent no gifts. Here's the wedding of the Guiyuan Marquis, the funeral of the Duke of Ding's mother, and this, the thick stack of gift lists in the Vice Minister's hands, item by item, revealed how the newly enfeoffed Northern Garrison General, now a Marquis, had suddenly turned cold and distant, severing ties with all the noble families of the capital. Jiang Ningyu listened with cold sweat trickling down his back and pressed his hand over the vice minister's to stop him from flipping through more pages. "My lord, with my father deceased and my mother ill, the household has always been managed by my wife. She would never be so rude. I must ask her how she could be so careless." The Vice Minister of Rights interrupted him. "Marquis, you mustn't speak like this. Your wife has been praying for you daily at the Golden Light Temple, and this matter was also reported to the Ministry of Rights." Although the Vice Minister of Rights wasn't an exceptionally high-ranking official, he was still a ceremonial officer. Jiang Ningyu suddenly grabbed his hand, causing the Vice Minister's expression to darken. The newly inherited Marquis of Pingnan withdrew his hand, lowering his head under the Vice Minister's slightly cold tone and piercing gaze. "You're right, I've been preoccupied with various official matters these days, often sleeping at the Ministry of War or the General's residence. I'm not entirely clear about the details at home. It seems my concubine Dongqing has been managing things. Perhaps I should first return and consult my mother." The Vice Minister's calm voice remained unchanged as he continued, "What's there to ask, Marquis? Now isn't the time to figure out how things came to this, it's the time for urgent remedy. Although the Marquis's household has shown considerable lapses in etiquette, our Ministry of Rights conducts the swiftest investigations. Other noble houses won't pay much attention to routine social visits. After all, at this point, the Vice Minister gave a slight flick of the ceremonial list in his hand before folding it away, letting out a cold HMPH with a trace of derision. Who would have thought that just after the Marquis of Pingnan was promoted and ennobled, he suddenly started treating everyone with disdain? Jiang Ningyu finally couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his forehead, though in that moment, he also came to understand certain things. Yes, the Vice Minister is right, remedying the situation is most important, but I currently, after all, he had spent some time maneuvering in the imperial court and wasn't completely foolish, though always among military ranks and unskilled in bureaucratic formalities. He felt particularly awkward dealing with scholarly officials like the Vice Minister, yet he gradually grasped a truth. The Vice Minister of Rights wouldn't repeatedly mention this matter without purpose. Wasn't such persistent hinting precisely offering him a way out? So he stepped back several paces and offered the Vice Minister a rigid, formal bow. "Your Excellency, with my father deceased and mother gravely ill, and year-end duties pressing upon me, I find myself at a loss regarding this matter. I beg your Excellency to show me a path forward. Once this predicament is resolved, I shall express my profound gratitude." The Vice Minister nodded with slight reserve. It was rather peculiar for this minor official to put on airs before the Marquis of Pingnan, who held real military power. Having spent long years in the army, Jiang Ningyu could still humble himself to ask the Vice Minister this and that. His temper was indeed not bad, since the Marquis has personally come to seek my counsel. "I shall offer you a solution. Your household affairs have always been managed by your lady, why not beg her to return? While Buddhist devotion emphasizes sincerity, you must weigh what matters more against the chaos in your Marquis household." Jiang Ningyu was no fool either. He immediately slapped his forehead in realization. "It's no use for me to worry about this alone. I must consult my wife." The Vice Minister of Rights was pleased. "It's not just this matter that requires your wife's involvement." "What do you mean by that, Marquis Jiang?" "Don't blame this humble official for speaking out of turn. Though the Ministry of Rights may seem insignificant, rituals and music are the foundation of a nation. Only through proper rites can we educate the people and maintain court discipline. These so-called courtesies aren't merely about social exchanges and mutual benefits, they also establish hierarchies of status." "I understand that, but why would the Vice Minister suddenly single me out specifically?" Jiang Ningyu genuinely didn't understand, his confusion written plainly across his face. The Vice Minister of Rights put on airs again, that soft HMPH and cold smile making another appearance. "Wives and concubines also have their respective statuses. If Marquis Jiang continues acting so recklessly, I won't be able to keep quiet about this matter of favoring a concubine over your lawful wife." "Hide? What is there to hide about this matter, my wife and concubine?" A flash of anger crossed Jiang Ningyu's face, as if he was about to lose his temper, but he restrained himself. "Marquis, your wife may be your wife, but your daughter is the daughter of Grand Tutor Xue. Surely you know who Grand Tutor Xue is." Of course he knew. How could he not know his own superior? Being assigned to your father-in-law's army is a golden opportunity for rapid advancement. Marquis Jiang, with your literary and military talents, has great prospects for a brilliant future. The Vice Minister patted him on the shoulder. "But you're spending all your time doting on your concubine." Jiang Ningyu understood. He didn't even mind the Vice Minister's slightly over-familiar gesture. "This matter reflects poorly on my manners. I'll go to Golden Light Temple to consult with my wife. Your honorable wife will return from the capital's outskirts tomorrow morning. The temple has already reported to the Ministry of Rights." "Marquis Jiang, there's no need to hurry." The minister smiled as he called out to Jiang Ningyu, who was turning to leave, whereupon Lord Jiang turned back to express his thanks once more before hurrying off. Meanwhile, the minister walked behind the screen and beaded curtain on the east side of the room, flashing me a mischievous grin. "So cousin, how about that little nudge of mine? Pretty impressive, right?" By this point, I was already beside myself with amusement, having struggled all this while to keep from bursting into laughter. "You were always the best talker since childhood, though he'll probably be driven to death by Holly sooner or later. With your loud intervention, it'll achieve twice the result with half the effort." My cousin was the most mischievous when we were kids. Who would have thought he could come up with such words now? Never mind him, let's talk about you. You've grown up to be quite the smooth talker, I teased. The assistant minister scratched his head, and in the blink of an eye, that confident demeanor vanished, leaving behind only the cheerful, roguish look of a boy. "Cousin, you've got me all wrong, I was just guessing. But you must have a plan, right? After all, that little vixen's mess is all too real." "Of course I do. We'll just say the Marquis of Pingnan I mean his father had been gravely ill for days and happened to pass away right at the year's end, so it caused delays. We'll make up for it by sending gifts to every household later, quietly delivering the missing ones, with my father, the Grand Tutor, backing us. Who would dare question it? While he still holds military power, I'd better borrow some of his influence quickly." Her cousin laughed. "Sis, that's ruthless. It's all her own doing. Who could possibly blame you?" "Yes. The virtuous mistress is about to save the Marquis's household from chaos and crisis." Dongqing was in a terrible mood today, absolutely dreadful. Though she had already sold off several servants, nothing in the household seemed to please her. Despite having complete control over the vast Marquis's estate now, she still couldn't lay eyes on the one who held her heart. Little did she expect to feel even lonelier after marrying into the family, which made her furious. The food sent from the kitchen was still cold. She had already scolded the kitchen staff early in the morning, but they were all spineless, only knowing how to kneel and cry. Ironically, she herself often used tears as a shield, yet she wouldn't tolerate others doing the same. Dongqing smashed a bowl and decided to take her servants out for a stroll. I heard there's a beautiful plum garden in the outskirts of the capital, but only the families of nobles and royals are allowed to enter. Now she's also a marquis's wife. She had almost forgotten she was once a concubine. It wouldn't hurt to go see something new to lift her spirits. She went out with her own attendants, 2 maids originally from the estate, and 2 guards, but her mood was destined to worsen. Before we even stepped out of the small courtyard, Jiang Ningyu strode in. With me following right behind, of course. I wasn't there to watch the spectacle. I was holding a bowl of soup, prepared early in the morning to warm my husband's stomach. Who knew my husband would be in such a foul mood first thing in the morning, dragging me straight to Dongqing's courtyard? Well, I might as well witness her disgraceful behavior. Ningyu, you're back, Dongqing cried out, throwing herself at Jiang Ningyu the moment she opened her mouth. Jiang Ningyu, being a martial artist, could easily step aside when she really wanted to, just a slight turn of her body, and she left Dongqing grasping at air. I sneered from behind, stepping half a pace back to avoid her knocking over my soup. Dongqing, having lunged for real, stumbled forward and hit the ground with a solid thud. She cried out, "Ouch, that hurt." Ningyu, what's the big idea? We haven't seen each other in ages. Why are you dodging me? The smile on my face deepened. Instead of helping her up, I took the maid Chunying's hand and stepped back a few paces, watching with amusement as this woman made a fool of herself. When Dongqing finally scrambled to her feet, she remained kneeling on the ground, lifting her delicate eyes to Jiang Ningyu with practiced softness. "Ningyu, say something. You came to see me. Why is she here too?" The little minx, catching sight of my impeccably dressed self smiling at her, immediately abandoned her pitiful act and glared at me with undisguised fury. "Ningyu, let's go inside to talk." "All right, I'm afraid Madam might." Jiang Ningyu didn't fall for her act this time, taking another step back with a chilling tone. "If you insist on kneeling, then kneel properly. I put you in charge of managing the household affairs. Just tell me what exactly you've accomplished." Dongqing immediately grew guilty. "The household? I don't understand. Ningyu, this is my first time managing such a large marquis's estate, with no one to help me. It's inevitable. Didn't Steward Tong warn you about anything?" Dongqing's voice grew even weaker. "No, he didn't. But the reason Jiang Ningyu came to demand an explanation today was precisely because he'd spent yesterday investigating various affairs within the household. This matter was discovered last night when Chunying returned early to tidy up the rooms." Of course he didn't. You sold off several maids from the household, replaced a whole batch of servants. And even the dozen or so people you brought with you, you'd probably give a title to a dog if you could. Do you think this lot would care about the Marquis's household? Dongqing fell silent, kneeling properly with her head bowed, looking every bit the picture of someone ready to accept punishment. She knew that now was not the time to make a scene. She had to appear thoroughly contrite to let Jiang Ningyu's anger pass. "Do you even remember the gifts that need to be sent to each family? That was originally Zhao San's responsibility. Where did you reassign him to? You tell me." Dongqing stammered. "I reassigned him to the stables, to shovel manure. Now that he's shoveling horse dung, all social engagements with the Marquis's household have been severed. If servants from the princess or nobility come demanding answers tomorrow, you'll kneel out there yourself and explain this manure shoveling business." Jiang Ningyu had probably never flown into such a rage before. She slapped Dongqing across the face. The young maid's eyes filled with utter terror as her cheek immediately began reddening and swelling. Spring Oriole snickered behind my back. "Finally it's that wretched huss's turn." I laughed inwardly too, though I couldn't show excessive amusement on my face. Turning around, I stroked Spring Oriole's cheek. The slap Wintergreen had given her last time had long since left no trace. But I'd never forgotten it. How dare anyone strike one of my people so easily? "As long as you feel better, that's what matters." It's just a shame this first slap was delivered by Jiang Ningyu. Next time, I'll personally slap her back for you. Chunying bowed cheerfully and said, knowing that Madam cares for this servant is enough to make me happy. I turned to look at Jiang Ningyu. Dongqing was kneeling on the ground, knocking her head against the floor like a flower trembling in the north wind, pitiful and fragile. Ningyu, I was wrong. I won't dare again. She tried to kneel more gracefully, making her posture appear more submissive, but unfortunately, Jiang Ningyu was in a towering rage. This tactic was useless now. Neglecting social obligations is one thing. But what about the charcoal for the mansion, the New Year goods, winter clothes, and next year's provisions? You've failed in every single one. With this kind of performance, how dare you ask me for authority over the household? In his fury, Jiang Ningyu paced back and forth as he spoke, nearly slamming his fist into the wall. I must have been blind, just assisting Qingqing with management, and you've already made such a mess. If I were to hand over full authority to you, wouldn't you tear down the entire Marquis residence? Get out, go kneel in the courtyard for 5 hours, if you dare mention managing the Marquis household again. Don't blame me for laying hands on you once more. This was the most severe punishment Dongqing had ever received, and the first time Jiang Ningyu had personally disciplined her. The furious Marquis Jiang trembled with rage for a long while, while the tearful Dongqing was helped to the courtyard to kneel. The sun will rise soon, and she'll have to kneel. My lord, don't let anger harm your health. Let's go. Dongqing is still young and has never managed such a large estate as the Marquis's residence. It's normal for him to be unfamiliar with things. All household affairs can wait. Your health is most important. I handed the soup to Chunying. After being exposed to the cold wind for so long, this soup was no longer fit for him to drink. It was just for show. My arms grew tired from holding it, so I casually flexed my wrists to rest them. I'll have the kitchen prepare another breakfast for you, my lord. The weather's cold, you can't endure it without eating something. Chunying, go to the kitchen and keep an eye on things yourself. Chunying acknowledged the order, and I followed Jiang Ningyu's steps. Thank you, my dear. As for these household matters, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to sort them out. I smiled and interrupted him, taking one of his hands in mine. My lord, what are you saying? The Marquis's residence is my home, and managing household affairs is my duty as your wife. In the past few months, I've been preoccupied with praying for your safety and that of the soldiers, neglecting my responsibilities. I should be the one asking for your forgiveness. Jiang Ningyu seemed to want to say something, but he hesitated. There's no need. You've done everything perfectly, my dear. With my father passed away and my mother too grief-stricken to even leave her courtyard. It's just the two of us at home now. Would you like to accompany me for an outing during the new year? There's a plum blossom viewing festival at the suburban gardens. Jiang Ningyu held my hand and rambled on for quite a while, but I understood his intentions as clearly as if they were reflected in a mirror. The man finally realized that beyond my identity as Madam, I was also a considerate and beautiful woman. Naturally, I smiled and agreed. For a New Year's outing, one must naturally choose fine clothes and arrange many details. After continuing the conversation for a while, I urged him to go eat breakfast and rest. He had rushed back in haste, though his official duties at court were not yet completed. My dear, having you in the household puts my mind at ease, he said, holding my hand before leaving. I knew his words were somewhat perfunctory, but I didn't expose it. With warmth in my voice, I replied, husband, now that I am the lady of Pingnan Marquisate, I naturally consider everything for the Marquisate's sake. You can rest assured. After seeing off this nominal husband of mine, I returned to my chambers and summoned Chunying, ready to sort out the mess that had accumulated during this period. The gifts that were supposed to be delivered to various households might have been missing, but they were never truly lacking. Though they hadn't been sent out, I had secretly prepared them all along. Not only was there the first gift, but also a second one as an apology, making sure all formalities were properly observed. Then we conveniently used the passing of the previous Marquis of Pingnan as a pretext, and borrowed some influence from my father to smooth things over. Everything was settled perfectly. As for the maidservants sold off by Dongqing, I had someone secretly intercept them, and by now they were probably all doing menial work in my family's businesses. I couldn't immediately reorganize the staff she had replaced, lest it appear too much like flaunting my authority, Just as I was instructing Chunying to bring Zhao San back to take charge of the finances and sort out the gains and losses over the past few months, a maid came in to announce that someone was asking to see me. "Who is it?" "Madam, this is the inner residence. The Marquis isn't home, how could there be an outside guest?" Chunying was puzzled, and so was I. I drew the screen and told her to go see what was going on. Before long, she came running back with joy written all over her face. "Miss, it's that famous Dr. Lee from the capital. He says the Marquis sent him to ask if your hands are still sore from the work, when there were no outsiders around." Chunying still preferred to call me Miss. I also laughed. Making a mountain out of a molehill, he sure knows how to fish for compliments from me. Jiang Ningyu noticed the slight twist of my wrist and summoned a physician without a word, though his lowered head spoke volumes. "Go on, give him extra silver and say I appreciate Physician Lee's trouble, I'm perfectly fine. Also, send a pot of soup to my husband at the military camp, saying I made it myself. Just remember, don't make it too delicious. My cooking skills are merely passable." Chunying acknowledged with a smile and turned away, her steps light and cheerful. She had just left when another maid came rushing in, hastily knelt down and cried out, "Madam, something terrible has happened. The young concubine is too frail, she's fainted from kneeling." This matter wasn't exactly major, but neither was it trivial. With Dongqing's delicate constitution, it would have been a miracle if she hadn't fainted from kneeling. Fortunately, Physician Lee hasn't gone far. "Have him brought back again." The maid hesitated to speak, so I waved my hand. "Speak your mind." "I won't punish you," she kowtowed and said, "Madam, one of the lowly maidservants from the concubine's quarters just ran out of the Marquis's residence, heading straight for the Marquis's military camp." I had expected Dongqing to go crying to Jiang Ningyu. She knelt until her face turned pale and sweat covered her brow, lying on the bed as if she might shatter at any moment. Sure enough, Jiang Ningyu's heart softened, looking at this seemingly perfect match of talent and beauty. I couldn't be bothered to play the villainous matriarch who tears lovebirds apart. "Ningyu, I was wrong. I promise I'll never dare again. Please forgive me." "Alright, if it'll make you, if it'll earn your forgiveness, Dongqing." "Dongqing is willing to kneel for another 10 hours. Jiang Ningyu immediately looked heartbroken. Sitting by the bed, she took Dongqing's hand and said, "No need, Qing. As long as you've learned your lesson, that's enough. Your health matters more. Rest well and don't overexert yourself these days. I'll visit often when I have time." As Jiang Ningyu turned to instruct Physician Lee nearby, Dongqing seized the moment to shoot me a triumphant glance. I took the opportunity to roll my eyes at her and stood up to leave. To my surprise, the girl actually raised Jiang Ningyu's hand to her lips and gave it an intimate kiss right in front of me. Chunying immediately flared up and was about to step forward to vent her anger. Barely stopped by me in time. "Madam, she's in poor health and should take good care of herself. Since both the physician and my husband are present, I'll take my leave now. From now on, all daily necessities in Auntie's courtyard shall be doubled, so she can purchase more medicines and tonics." Having said that, I truly meant to leave. Jiang Ningyu only had time to nod at me, a gesture of gratitude for my generosity. Dongqing's kiss seemed to have left no impression on him, as if he had long grown accustomed to such gestures, and he claimed he'd stroll through the garden with the young mistress. What a superficial performance. Spring Oriole whispered a few words behind me in a voice only the two of us could hear. She harbored resentment over Jiang Ningyu being coaxed away by Holly again, but I couldn't care less. The bigger picture, I always remember my mother's words: if I were to fuss over trivial matters of the moment or get entangled in romantic affairs, I would never prevail. A man's heart is fickle, only what you hold in your own hands is real. Let's go first to see Zhao San. He must have had quite a scare this time. Dongqing seems to take the loss of power too lightly, almost as if there's some trickery. Let's probe a little more. "Yes, miss." When Zhao San arrived in my courtyard, his attitude was far more deferential than when I first entered the mansion. "I am very satisfied with this. If the Holly isn't ruthless, how can I demonstrate my own mercy and wisdom? Zhao San, do you know why I've summoned you this time?" He bowed to me again and said, "Whatever it is, madam. Just give the order and this humble servant will carry it out. There's no need for guessing." A very good answer. He knew exactly where he stood, after shoveling horse manure all this time. What insights have you gained? Shoveling horse manure doesn't bring insights. At best, it leads to sighs, complaints, and unspoken resentment. But Zhao San was indeed a clever man. After a brief moment of thought, he bowed for the third time. Madam, to say I have no feelings would be false, truth be told. I'm full of grievances, but while working in the stables, I did notice some discrepancies between the actual accounts and what was reported, though Zhao San kept his head bowed humbly. His words flowed with surprising ease. I listened casually for a few sentences before raising my hand to stop him. You've served in the prince's household for many years. While I'm practically a newcomer before you, your words seem well considered. So let me ask you something more. What are your thoughts regarding Steward Tong? Steward Tong was not replaced and turned a blind eye to Holly's domineering behavior, leading Jiang Ningyu to believe everything was fine in the household, but something was amiss. Zhao San knelt down this time. Madam, this humble servant finds it difficult to answer. If I reveal everything, I fear it may cause trouble for the household later. If I withhold anything, I won't be able to face you with a clear conscience in the future. I am the wife of Marquis Pingnan. If you can speak to me with complete honesty, how could it cause trouble for you later? With that, I dismissed all the servants except for Spring Oriole. Zhao San immediately knelt down respectfully and kowtowed. Madam, Steward Tong and the concubine have been betraying the family's trust. Just a quick check of the household accounts revealed numerous discrepancies. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Starting with the accountant was Dongqing's surest path to success. There was no way this wouldn't yield results. Rise. There are 20 days left before the new year. I'm entrusting you with 3 tasks. If you handle them all properly, you shall become the new steward. Zhao San kowtowed several times in succession, and I knew in my heart that this man was most likely already under my command. First, the daily necessities in the household have been insufficient since winter began. Even the charcoal in my courtyard is down to just a few catties. From clothing and food to shelter and transportation, down to the smallest details. You must take stock of everything and prepare a list for me. I will go to my father to request them. Once obtained, you will be responsible for arranging everything properly. Second, Auntie has been frequently reassigning staff in the household recently, leaving all year-end matters piled up unattended. You'll need to arrange for people to handle these. If funds fall short, come to me. I'll borrow more from the Shui family, no matter what. The household must celebrate the new year with proper festivity. Third, investigate thoroughly the matter of Steward Tong's betrayal. Consider this my personal affair. I can grant you no special privileges. Only when we have solid evidence can I step in. Understood? Get me detailed proof as quickly as possible. 3 tasks, none of them simple, and he had only 20 short days to accomplish them. Zhao San accepted them all, then turned and left. After he left, I took Chunying's hand and said, At last, you've gone from being an outsider to half a member of the family. Would you like to ask for a minor steward's position too? Chunying quickly shook her head. I'll just be the young lady's personal maid. I'll follow you for the rest of my life. You sweet talker, I teased, flicking her nose. My mood greatly lifted. Once all these matters were settled, I would personally slap Dongqing across the face. Only then would the anger in my heart be appeased. A few days after returning from the temple, having sorted out most of the mess at the residence, I still needed to go back to thank my mother. Such methods of letting Dongqing tear the house apart I wouldn't dare without my father funding it from behind. Dongqing took both food and goods, and nothing had been properly prepared. If not for my mother's prior correspondence with me, allowing us to keep an emergency stash at home, I wouldn't have been able to clean up this mess. Though it's been nearly half a year since I married into this household, the Grand Tutor's residence still feels just like my own home. My mother took me to lunch, dismissed the servants, and held my hand while pinching my cheeks and arms, fussing over me and saying I'd lost weight. Mother, what are you talking about? Your daughter prays every day without moving, eating vegetarian meals until I'm nearly fat. Mother laughed heartily. A little plump is good. After laughing, she still reached out to touch my not exactly flat, slightly chubby belly. Why hasn't there been any movement? It's been half a year already. If that concubine bears a son before you, you won't have such an easy time controlling her. I was also worried. But my husband refuses to enter my chamber no matter what. Mother, I don't like speaking with him either, it's truly a dilemma. My mother's expression turned serious as she lowered her voice. Do you think your mother enjoys speaking with your father either? I wouldn't fall for her trickery and laughed. Yes, yes, the handkerchiefs mother painstakingly embroidered were all meant for others. Yet father somehow stole one and carries it with him every day. Such a glib tongue. Mother raised her hand in mock threat, and I dodged away with a laugh. After some playful banter, she pulled me back to her side. All right now, that Marquis Jiang does cut a fine figure after all. Stop being so picky. As a girl, how can you expect every marriage to be perfect? Such are the times you must strive for yourself. I turned serious too. Once or twice might be bearable, but if I get pregnant, how many times must I grovel? Mother, he's always clinging to that Dongqing. I can't be bothered to compete. No need to compete. Your mother has a remedy. Just follow the timing of your monthly cycle. Once or twice should do the trick. Really, of course it's true. Where else do you think your eldest brother came from? Suddenly enlightened, I exclaimed. So mother also used tricks on father. Mother rapped me on the head again. Love is fleeting. It can only embellish what's already there. The foundation you must fight for yourself. Haven't I told you this since you were little? I'll fight for it. Mother, give me the prescription. How do I count the days? Mother motioned for me to lean closer. Though there were no outsiders around, such matters were best discussed in whispers. During my brief visit to my parents' home, Dongqing overstepped her bounds. She went to manage a tong and made a hefty profit by selling the screen from my chamber, claiming it had cracked in winter and was beyond repair. What a vile creature. Let's see how long her glory lasts. Chunying spat bitterly. She had indeed gone too far. Zhao San was already investigating her. And the screen incident happened to be the perfect opportunity. Just one night later, Zhao San delivered the evidence straight to my desk. I calculated the timing and sent someone to fetch Jiang Ningyu. I didn't mention Dongqing, only saying that the kitchen had prepared some delicious treats and that the weather was nice, inviting him to admire the moon. After Jiang Ningyu's affairs were settled, with the year's end approaching, everyone was resting at home and Dongqing had him firmly wrapped around her finger. It wasn't until the moon had passed its zenith late at night that he finally arrived, fashionably late. I was reading in the small pavilion of the Marquis's back garden, holding a hand warmer, with a charcoal fire on the table keeping a pot of tea warm. When Jiang Ningyu entered the pavilion, I pretended to be too sleepy, nodding off with my eyes half closed like a fishing bobber. He sat down beside me, gave me a once-over, and couldn't help but laugh. My dear, how could you be this sleepy? I pretended to wake with a start. I must have dozed off waiting for you. My lord, what time is it? Is the moon still out? The moonlight is just right. My dear, what book are you reading? Putting down the hand warmer, I held it up for him to see. I'm reading a play script, The Peony Pavilion. He laughed. What's so good about such stories? If some poor scholar really managed to attach himself to a wealthy young lady, he wouldn't be so deeply devoted. Swindling money and taking advantage would be inevitable. I feigned a look of confusion, then edged closer to Jiang Ningyu as if seeking warmth from the stove, spreading the book open for him to see. But what if there really exists such a good man in this world? Look at him, how pleasant his words are. Jiang Ningyu seemed momentarily moved, reaching out to carefully, gently rest his arm around my shoulder. I understood perfectly well, thinking to myself that men will always be men after all, but my face showed no sign of noticing, only gazing at him with delicate vulnerability as I waited for his response. Meeting my eyes, he still smiled, the hand on my shoulder shifting from tentative to firm as he drew me a little closer into his embrace. Truth be told, even at this proximity, his face remained remarkably pleasing to look at. Years of military service had made his embrace solid and warm, extraordinarily reassuring. If he weren't the type to keep mistresses, he might have been a decent match. Darling, such good men simply don't exist in this world. If a poor scholar truly loved a woman, he wouldn't bear to let her suffer hardship with him. He'd redouble his efforts instead of engaging in secret affairs that would give people cause to gossip. Not letting your beloved suffer hardship has nothing to do with knowledge or vision. It's something everyone should understand. If all he knows is romantic talk, then he's only after pleasure, unwilling to take responsibility. I secretly played with a stray lock of hair at his temple, as if absent-mindedly asking, when two hearts beat as one, Everything's wonderful, how could that be called irresponsible? What can a poor scholar offer to take responsibility? Storybooks always deliberately make scholars pass the imperial exams, as if wealthy young ladies never entrust themselves to the wrong person. But think about it, how many talented scholars are there in this world who can achieve fame and rank just by saying so? If he spends all his days pining for women, where would he find the time to study for the exams? I put on an expression as if I were beginning to understand. That makes sense. But if, as you say, a poor scholar marrying a wealthy lady is with ulterior motives, then why is it so common for ordinary women to marry into noble families? He pondered for a moment and laughed. Naturally, there are benefits to be gained. As the mistress of a wealthy household, she would always share in some of the glory. When a man takes a wife, he seeks to dominate her, which noble families would never allow. But when a woman marries, she merely changes her protector. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think so. Perhaps women are simply braver in pursuing love, unafraid of wealth or poverty. You men always put profit first, seeing only money, never troubled by matters of the heart. I pretended to be angry. Jiang Ningyu still smiled. Ching-ching, if these words of yours spread, they might anger the whole world. Let them be angry then. As long as my husband isn't angry with me. Isn't what I said correct? He replied. Of course it's not. Both men and women are human beings. How many are truly trapped by love? There are always those with ulterior motives. He couldn't continue, for these words reminded him of someone, yet I knew the topic had been successfully diverted. Tonight's single arrow had felled 2 hawks. The balance between Dongqing and myself had finally tilted subtly in my favor. I added fuel to the flames. But look at your concubine Dongqing, hasn't she followed you faithfully since your days of poverty? Never asking for anything. And look at me, though Grand Tutor Xue holds high position and great power, didn't I willingly marry beneath my station and find it sweet as honey my foot? After coaxing him through this charade, I'd have to confess another sin before the Buddha. At last Jiang Ningyu realized, since entering his household as a concubine, Dongqing had never asked for anything beyond so-called authority. Even this small bit of power had long been taken back. Yet she neither argued nor made a scene, swallowing her resentment with quiet resignation. As for that little tea-house she once ran herself, where people could listen to music and sip tea, it had long since shut down, all because she couldn't accept her fate and provoked our Xue family. She asked for nothing, not even making a fuss about being kept from seeing Jiang Ningyu. What was she after? Before, she sought the influence Jiang Ningyu gave her to open a shop, but what about now? Jiang Ningyu couldn't keep up the idle chatter anymore. My dear, is everything at home going well? I put on a clueless expression. Everything's fine, the gifts have been replenished, and I've already sent Zhao San to buy the necessary supplies, though it might be too late for some things, and I may need to borrow a bit from my father to properly prepare for winter. The items my mother prepared in advance were sent out under Minister Xue's name, making him even more grateful to my father. When you're away from home, it's either your father or your cousin who comes in handy. It's nearly impossible to lose with them around. Jiang Ningyu noticed something else and grew even more wary. Zhao San, the accountant, didn't he say anything to you? Not that I recall. I only told him to speed up the purchases. I didn't ask about the accounts, planning to settle them in the last few days of the year. What about Steward Tong? When Ching made mistakes before, he didn't remind her. After you returned, didn't he mention any troubles to you? No, I shook my head. He said there were no major issues in the household, just that the young concubine was inexperienced and therefore forgot some things occasionally. Jiang Ningyu sprang to his feet with a start. When he first returned, his attention had been entirely consumed by Dongqing's feigned illness and coquettish behavior. Treating her as a naive little girl, he hadn't taken it seriously, assuming she simply didn't know better. But now, with his perspective adjusted, he realized this little minx had dared to meddle with the money manager, and without even informing him. This was an unforgivable transgression. Steward Tong had kept silent, failing to intervene or report even when Zhao San was replaced. The realization finally dawned on him. This isn't just a trivial matter of disciplining servants. Zhao San abandoned his post. The steward turned a blind eye, and now someone from his household has dared to steal from ours. My dear, I must attend to some other matters first. You should rest early. I smiled and nodded. Very well, husband, don't overexert yourself. With such a perfect opportunity to crush those insolent flowers, who could bear to rest, I sent Chunning to eavesdrop beneath the walls of the wintergreen courtyard. If anyone asks, just say the mistress wants to use this year's first melted snow for brewing tea, and she's currently searching the estate for a suitable spot to place bowls for collection. I went through the motions of washing up and extinguishing the lights to rest, lying in bed waiting for Chunning's news. Unfortunately, exhausted from recent exertions and having spent so long feigning courtesy with Jiang Ningyu, I grew drowsy as the night deepened without her return, and eventually fell asleep. In my dream, it seemed someone gently caressed my face. The next morning, the moment I opened my eyes, I saw Chunning. What happened last night? I asked as she helped me get up. Chunning snorted. That concubine is full of tricks. Last night, when the Marquis scolded her, she vomited blood and fainted. She sure knows how to beg for mercy. Let's see how many more mistakes that frail body of hers can endure. As we were talking, breakfast was brought in from the small kitchen, a bowl of hot porridge and a portion of golden shredded pancake. Noticing a speck of white on the pancake, I remarked, "Is it really snowing outside?" Chunning finally smiled at this. Yes. It snowed heavily last night. Dongqing knelt in the snow for half the night, being scolded. She was crying and begging. It was quite satisfying to hear. No wonder she coughed up blood and fainted. Even the winter sun can make one ill if exposed too long, and now with the snow, I fear she won't recover from this sickness. Thinking too much is useless. I still need to check if the winter supplies in the mansion's storeroom are ready. In fact, next spring's provisions should be prepared in advance. Chunning followed me with an umbrella, but we hadn't gone far when we ran into Jiang Ningyu. He seemed to have slept poorly, his complexion unusually pale and his expression quite stern. When he saw me, he forced a smile. Ching. Did last night's heavy snow leave you cold? Before I could speak, Chunning retorted on my behalf. Not enough charcoal, thin quilts, where would we find warmth? Now even Madam's heating stove is barely maintained. I wonder if anyone cares. Jiang Ningyu's face immediately showed remorse. Ching, I'm also to blame for this. I shouldn't have let her and Steward Tong seize power, making you suffer. I smiled and said, Chunning's just an ignorant maid talking nonsense, with all the household affairs piling up. My lord needn't worry about me. You don't look well. Did you catch cold last night? In the end, it was I who broached the topic. Jiang Ningyu's expression darkened as he shook his head repeatedly, saying, Don't ask, Ching, it has nothing to do with you. He turned and left in hurried steps. Leaning on Chunning's arm, I glanced at his retreating figure and said, I'll go to the warehouse to take stock. Call Jiao-san to come as well. After a moment's thought, I added, Tell the small kitchen to send the Marquis a bowl of hot soup. Make sure it's kept warm in a heater. Chunning responded with a quick yes. Then found a nearby maid to hold an umbrella before hurrying off to her tasks. The next 3 days are all auspicious dates, and I want to ensure my plan proceeds without a hitch. In the corner of the warehouse, Jiao-san and I met alone once again. The matter I entrusted to you has barely over 10 days left. How is it progressing? Madam, all matters concerning the ancestral worship and family visits during the new year have been properly arranged. As for the household purchases, we still need to take inventory of the storeroom before making a final count. Not bad. After the new year, I'll have the Marquis give you some pointers. Did the Marquis summon you last night? Jiao-san bowed slightly. Yes, he inquired about the household finances, and I presented all the evidence to him one by one. Does the young concubine know about this? I wouldn't know. The Marquis ordered me to keep this secret, so the young mistress likely never found out. What about Chief Steward Tong? Chief Steward Tong knelt outside the Marquis's door all last night. Presumably he confessed everything, but no one was allowed in or out of that courtyard last night, so the information might not be accurate. I gave a cold laugh. Even Jiang Ningyu has started acting behind Dongqing's back. That little wench has finally reached her end. You're most wise, madam. What wisdom is there to speak of, without you stewards managing the household? I'd be hard-pressed to oversee 100 servants alone. Dongqing never understood this, and today's outcome is what she brought upon herself. I'll take my leave now. Expedite the investigation. The charcoal in my courtyard won't last much longer. Jiao-san acknowledged the order and hurried off. As I was leaving the storeroom, Chunying came running to find me after delivering the soup. Madam, Holly is playing the victim again, putting on such a dying act. I told her to speak slowly. What dying act? When I went to deliver the soup, the Marquis deliberately had me stay and listen to his conversation with Holly's old servant. After vomiting blood, she fell unconscious. The servant said she's now delirious. The moment she opens her eyes, she calls out the Marquis's name. The Marquis has gone to keep watch in her courtyard again. I finished for her. How could this trick work so well? I wondered, determined to borrow it for my own use, learn the advanced skills of foreigners to subdue them, I thought, rubbing my face red and slapping my forehead hot. I tucked the last remnants of snow against my chest and took to my sickbed. Dongqing lay unconscious, occasionally opening her eyes to call his name repeatedly. Tears fell on the sickbed as she longed to beg his forgiveness, yearning to see her beloved Jianglang once more. Jiang Ningyu's two women collapsed simultaneously overnight, leaving him utterly bewildered, but his attitude must be correct, especially since he cared about both of these women to some extent.
Madam, Grand Tutor Xue has sent a cartload of charcoal, saying it's exclusively for his own daughter. He asks that you rest peacefully to recover from your illness and no longer endure any grievances. How could father know about my affairs? I feigned surprise. Servants weren't permitted to answer such questions. After placing the warm charcoal brazier in the center of the room and stoking it to a good blaze, the servant departed. Jiang Ningyu suddenly found herself uncertain whether she should reprimand Chunying or not. My dear, this charcoal, it will help ease our urgent needs for now. Please use it first, and I'll resolve this matter as soon as possible. I held his hand and said, Husband, don't overthink it. It wasn't me who complained to father. I think it's probably because when I visited home a few days ago, I mentioned that the Marquis's household was short on supplies and worried about difficulties purchasing for the new year. My father, concerned for his daughter, must have sent these things. I've already told Zhao San that if the household can't procure enough supplies, just let me know. I'll go ask father for them. We must ensure you have a proper New Year's celebration, Jiang Ningyu said with shame. My wife is most considerate, and the Grand Tutor is exceedingly generous. I laughed. Why speak so formally between family? We're not family yet. I'm keeping an eye out for the master. Once the new year passes, no one will be able to hide the matter between you, Marquis Jiang, and Dongqing. Just as Jiang Ningyu's face turned pale outside the door, that woman's voice rang out again. Marquis. Miss Dongqing says she's in unbearable pain all over. She must have injured herself from kneeling earlier. The moment she stepped through the door, Jiang Ningyu turned around and roared, Get out! This is a Marquis residence, not a marketplace. The old servant fled in panic, while I couldn't hide the smile on my face. Husband, aren't you going to check on her? No, she's been exploiting her life-saving favor repeatedly with such tricks, even for Qingqing's sake. I can't indulge her any longer. I gave Chunying a meaningful look, and the little girl reluctantly gathered the foot-soaking supplies before leaving and closing the door, muttering sarcastically outside, Madam and the Marquis should rest well. Holding Jiang Ningyu's hand, I also spoke against my true feelings. Husband, you should return early to rest as well. Since I've come to your chambers today, how could there be any reason to go back and rest? Qingqing. I want to become family with you. He wanted to become family, yet in my heart I prayed fervently, we must have a son. From the day Jiang Ningyu entered my bedroom, we gradually became a real family. The new year was bustling with excitement. The long-ailing old madam also came out to join the festivities for a while. Relatives came and went, making the atmosphere lively, and Zhao San's arrangements were impeccable. The items borrowed from the Grand Tutor's residence helped everyone survive the winter safely, and the Marquis's return gifts and gratitude were equally generous. Dongqing was confined to her room. Jiang Ningyu didn't visit her, nor was she allowed to leave. Of course she refused to accept it and sneaked out to plead for mercy, only to find Jiang Ningyu away accompanying the emperor for ancestral worship and celestial rites. Chunying and I each gave her a slap effortlessly and delightfully. She probably never understood until her death why, despite being Pingnan Marquis Jiang Ningyu's most beloved, after all the crying, tantrums, and threats of suicide, her most pitiful and desperate attempts to win favor, it was I who ultimately gained the upper hand that very night, forever. Because the more she pleaded, the more Jiang Ningyu feared the matter would reach my father. The words can't be hidden from the Vice Minister of Rites lingered in his mind, impossible to shake off. I feigned illness just to have a chance to speak a few words to him. This opportunity was easy to obtain. Dongqing managed to secure it, yet ended up saying the wrong things. What is love? When men pursue noble families, all they seek is profit. Steward Tong was sent to shovel horse manure right after the new year, while Zhao San took his place and kept everything in perfect order. My monthly cycle was also delayed, so at the end of the first lunar month, I had Chunying fetch physician Li. Indeed, it was a joyful pulse, truly one blessing after another, making one's heart light and happy. We visited the plum garden, admired the moon, and attended the lantern festival, soaking up every bit of excitement. Jiang Ningyu really knows how to please a woman. Qing, come spring, I'll be heading back to garrison the frontier. Shall I take Dongqing with me? I didn't even lift my head, just kept drinking my soup. Jiang Ningyu held my hand and said softly, don't misunderstand me. I want to send her to the borderlands. When the war is over, we won't bring her back, let her start a family out there. I laughed. So you're finding a way to exile her to the frontier? He shook his head. What kind of talk is that? Qing, she was never my wife to begin with. How could she stay in the manor forever? If she stays too close, I fear it would trouble you. I finally finished the soup, took the handkerchief Jiang Ningyu handed me, and leaned against him slightly. Though my mind was elsewhere, I asked, husband, did you ever love my aunt, even if, just for a little while? He answered almost without hesitation, I never loved her. Qing, I swear to you, not to please you, but the honest truth, my kindness to her was solely out of gratitude for saving my life. Was marrying her your way of repaying her? Then I, Qing, shouldn't be in the position of the principal wife. Jiang Ningyu gazed steadily at me and said solemnly for the first time, Qing, the truth is, I originally intended never to marry, because Dongqing and I never consummated our union. I didn't want her to suffer, nor was I willing to spend my life with someone I didn't love. I looked back at him, and the more I looked, the more I believed it was the truth. My husband and I share the same heart and mind, and I am truly overjoyed, but inwardly, I could only sigh deeply. Jiang Ningyu, it's a pity that as a woman, I don't even have the right to choose. Jiang Ningyu indulged me in everything, until the early spring when the emperor sent him on a distant campaign. We corresponded by letter like a truly loving couple, with Jiang Ningyu thinking of me daily, even telling me about the magnificent scenery beyond the frontier and promising to take me and our child there when he had the time. I agreed to everything in my replies. The absence of Holly in the mansion made the scenery dull, and both the child and I had gained quite a bit of weight. But by late spring and early summer, before the child was born and just as the first blooms appeared in the mansion, urgent news arrived from the front lines in the capital. The northern garrison general died in battle at the front lines, and with the war still raging, Jiang Ningyu was buried at the border alongside over 10,000 fallen soldiers. My mother-in-law's illness suddenly worsened, as if she had aged 20 years overnight, holding letter after letter from home. She wept until no more tears would come. She went to the Golden Light Temple to bid me farewell as well, taking my sins and remorse before the Buddha. Apart from fighting for a son and standing up for Chunying, it seems I accomplished nothing at all, yet in constant harmony with the greater scheme, I ultimately won myself a peaceful second half of life. As autumn deepened and another winter approached, my child was born, a son. I named him Jiang Nianbei. In remembrance of his father who marched north to the frontier and never returned home. Grief is like a thick book, its pages gradually thinned by spring rains, summer thunder, autumn winds, and winter snows. My son was raised with the help of servants, his father having sacrificed his life for the country, and we never lacked the annual rewards bestowed upon us. I traveled the mountains and rivers, strolled through the countryside, until nearing 70 I could no longer walk. And with white hair, I played cards and teased cats with the maids and servants in the mansion. Chunying passed away over a decade ago, and occasionally when I sit by the lamp, I feel somewhat lonely. On my 70th birthday, I had a dream. Jiang Ningyu remained as handsome and dashing as ever. He held my hand and asked, "My dear, have you lived well this lifetime?" I replied, "With you was good, but the years without you were even better." Jiang Ningyu laughed heartily. "Such free-spirited words from you. My dear, now I can rest easy.